What's up, everybody? Nick Powell's publisher of 1851franchise.com. Today we are talking Craveworthy Brands. What is that? What does that mean? Coming up next. All right, Kim, I actually lied. We're talking you first. Then we'll talk Craveworthy Brands.
Yeah.
So I hate that I ask the same question at the beginning of these things, but it's so relevant. And then I put these disclaimers on here and explaining why I have to ask the same question. But tell me your franchise story. How did you accidentally fall into franchising?
Great question. So it was very unexpected. I've been on the vendor side my whole career within restaurants, starting from PCI compliance to franchisees, all the way to loyalty, CRM, mobile apps, white labeled reservation systems, and then all the way to a little bit of food safety. When I was actually working for the food safety company, I was at a trade show. A gentleman named Andy Wiederhorn and his partner Jessica kind of just randomly said hello to each other and was just like, "You'd be great selling franchises. You're going to come work for me." Every Friday I golf with my dad. And so I was getting a couple phone calls on that Friday, and I was surprised from Beverly Hills, took the phone call, and crossed over and haven't gone back.
All right. So how many times have you beat your dad, or how many times does your dad beat you? Is that the better question?
That's the best part about every Friday is who knows what your Friday led into, you know?
Okay. So you're on the vendor side.
Mhm.
And so I'm sure you have a viewpoint on working with the brands,
Yes.
Which I'm curious what that was. And then when you went onto the brand side, were your expectations on the way that the brands place expectations on you on the vendor side aligned, or what was that experience making that shift?
To be honest, I think it makes it a little bit more humbling on both sides. I feel for the vendors in terms of they want a solve, but I also feel for the vendors where if you're not communicating what's going on internally, there's no chance that they're going to successfully set themselves up for internal expectations of actually closing a deal, of saying this is not on the radar while you have a great product and or would be beneficial. It's not going to fit this quarter, this year, call me next year. And because of that, I really do try to make an effort in saying, if I'm going to reach out to you or if I'm going to have this meeting, we're going to have it, because I've been there where I've been stood up and, people appease me where I'd rather, and I would hope that a lot of people in the space would rather have a solve for any type of nuances that are going on in someone's business.
When you look at, if you were to reflect backwards on your career and you look at just all the steps you made, including going to food safety.
Yep.
Like, does it make sense now that what you have in your toolkit to actually help people buy into franchising? Like, did this roadmap wasn't engineered, but now that you reflect backwards, does it make sense?
Yeah, because in terms of basically touching all areas, operations, technology, marketing, you get the good, bad, and the ugly, right? So you get to celebrate the successes with the franchisor or the franchisee, but then you also understand the pain point of implementing it at the store level, and then also understand what that looks like for their cashier to have to deal with the consumer where, on paper, your product or your services sound great, but it's not executing correctly at the store level. And so some of the multi-unit operators that we're talking to today, I have the ability to speak to and say, X is not going to happen because we've already solved for Y. And that's a better reason of coming to Craveworthy. We're not going to have these nuances. We're not going to have hiccups by adding these new technologies or these new products. Within Craveworthy, and I know we're not talking about them yet, but within Craveworthy, this past year, and what Greg and even Jeremy have done a really good job of, Warwick as well, is really putting foundational metrics in place so that we plug in a concept or we plug in a brand, we know what technology needs to be updated, and then any type of execution with marketing, any type of IT update, anything operationally, we know streamline that every concept is going to get the same service, the same SLAs, and then of course we now get the buying power so that all costs at least are as low as possible, which again is something that hurts the franchisee's bottom line.
Well, in essence, I mean, and this has happened at two places that you've been at, because you've been at multi-brand franchisors. Your current one's a little bit different than the last one. Last one almost allowed autonomy back to the brands to operate separately. But here with Craveworthy, what you're saying is hey, wait, before we franchise the brands, even though some of them were pre-franchised,
Right.
but before we franchise a brand, let's franchise our methodology. And if we can nail this, then the widget of the brand becomes irrelevant. And hopefully to the operator, then they could actually be a multi-brand operator within your system and see a lot of similarities no matter where you go.
Exactly. And then it teaches them to be almost, let's call it ninja savvy. They know exactly what services are where. So whatever concept they're at of, there's no nuances of, if I'm at a Budlong today, I know there's different operational systems that I'm going to go to a Wing It On tomorrow and or a Genghis Grill. Really focusing on those so that the operators can be is involved. Obviously, they don't have to be there, all day, but they need to be in their business, and then they're able to, teach and educate on those executions very quickly.
If you were to zoom out of these businesses, and maybe even not Craveworthy, just in general in franchising, because you've operationalized so much of the business, what ends up being the miss from your viewpoint on success versus non-success when it comes to an operator? Is it like, hey, we've set this whole structure up, or even when you were working in loyalty is great if we can actually drive the customers in there and give them the experience that they expected. But what ends up being if you had to define the miss between good and great with a franchisee, how would you describe that?
So I think it's the relationships, and I always will circle back to that, in the culture within the organization of the franchisor. Franchisees should feel comfortable to say, hey, this was a miss at the operations level when you executed this LTO or this marketing campaign, whatever it may be. And the operator in the franchisor should listen. That's they're at the ground level. But at the same time, we also cannot have the franchisees trying to reinvent the wheel. If they wanted to become their own restaurant operator, or they felt that they were doing something better and they did not voice it, and then they went, wild, wild west, that puts them on an island by themselves, where it makes it even more challenging for the franchisor to come in and try to help with same store sales. So as long as we're partnering together and knowing that, it's a learning game. I'm not saying that we're going to be perfect every time. It's a learning game because of the economy, because of new marketing specials, because of generations. And so as long as we're in it together and we're communicating, I think that's the best way. Siloing yourself as a franchisor or a franchisee, I think, is the biggest hindrance between good and great.
Yeah. Why are you spending a royalty or making any type of franchise payment if you're willing to go against or buck the system? So
Yep.
now I'm gonna lead with this question because it's my perception, but I think this will set up like what is Craveworthy. If I look at what you guys have done, and I want you to describe obviously like state of the business after I ask this question, but it's almost like if I take fitness, right, Bally's just have these ginormous boxes. And like you take an Orange Theory or take one of these small 24/7 fitness concepts, all they did is extract out from the big gyms what was already happening there, the Pilates class that was happening within there. If I look at the restaurant space, and COVID probably accelerates this a little bit, but the biggest competitor in the space is the DoorDashes or Uber Eats, because I, as a customer, can go on there and get anything that I want.
Yep.
And it seems like now, because you've operationalized, how do we create a better experience, both through third party and within our four walls? But you're extracting out the brands again from the DoorDashes or the Uber Eats and building them back into units, which the customer is saying we might not need as big a footprints as we used to have, but we still want the brick and mortars to exist for credibility and to actually be a loyalist to the brand. So I'm saying all this, but is that ultimately kind of what you guys are doing now? You're pulling back out the brands from the everyday menu and saying, let's make them really, really great by operationalizing it the Craveworthy way?
I think we've all gone to restaurants, and just trying to extrapolate or compare both of your examples. We've gone to restaurants where the menu is so big, you don't know what is actually good. So by taking all of our concepts, and Greg has done a very good job of, if it's not craveable or if it's not crave-worthy, we don't want the concept. We don't want to be just another pizza place that you get okay pizza, but the ordering experience is great and you had a good deal. We want to have really good food, and we want to deliver it really well. And whether that delivery mechanism is in store, third party, or just you're carrying out to your family. And so what we've done is we've taken what we believe on all the concepts that are excellent, right? So Wing It On, we have great chicken tenders. We source really good quality chicken, good sizes. Genghis Grill, we focus on, the lost art of Chinese food and the Asian flair. If it's not, Asian centric, then we're really going to stick away from it. We're not going to try to be a catch-all for a, buffalo chicken bowl versus, something that would be centric to the Genghis Grill. And I say that, and it sounds repetitive or it sounds silly, but you can get a little distracted by chasing shiny things or saying that, empanadas are popular right now, so we should put them in all of our locations. If it doesn't make sense as an add-on in the location, don't put it in. It's just going to be a distraction from what the brand truly is. And, I think consistency right now is something that's been lacking. And so by having a smaller menu, a more intentional menu, we're able to source better food. We're able to provide better consistency. There's always the story with who's got the better chicken sandwich. Truly, if you get a solid Popeyes chicken sandwich, hands down, it's the best chicken sandwich you ever get. But it's a little dicey when you're going through the drive-thru and you don't necessarily know if you're going to get the best chicken sandwich. Yeah. Chick-fil-A crushes everyone because they are perfectly consistent from the time of saying hello to the food that you receive. And so I think there's a hybrid there that is a sweet spot for all restaurants. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to achieve with the restaurants in our portfolio today.
Is that why people are interested in buying in, or are they interested in buying in because they're betting on the jockeys? Because the leadership team is stacked. So is it you're betting on the jockeys, or is it a combination of all three? The technology and operations, the way that you've hyper focused in on what you can market from a menu standpoint, and then the depth of the leadership?
I would say all three. The beautiful thing about the brands we have is there's a lot of white space. So coming into our concept, you're not going to be cornered purchasing someone else's, older location. Obviously, we have some opportunities, but it's primarily if you would like to open in Florida, we have space for you amongst almost all of our concepts. So you're not going to be pigeonholed into operating in an area perhaps that isn't beneficial for where you live or where you work or travel. The leadership team is excellent. I hands down completely agree with that. Greg is a phenomenal operation and finance guy. He knows how to make the numbers work. He knows how to set up kitchens so that your labor is low, your operations, and food costs are low. Negotiating obviously at that parent level. We brought in Jeremy Tyson, who is very good at marketing and technology and streamlining technology so that there's no middle layer and the integrations are there. So there's no hiccups at the employee/guest level. And then we brought in a couple other people, Warwick, who is phenomenal at digital marketing and technology, who's really done a great job with our third party to lower commissions, to, have great promotions that drive in-store sales. And then, we have a great leadership team as well. So recently we have brought on board Greg Creed, who, as everyone knows, was the CEO of Yum. Prior to that, the CEO of Taco Bell. If there's no one else that knows marketing quite like him and staying authentic to a brand and yourself, I would challenge anyone on that. So I think it's something that's been great for our concepts as a whole by having these people so that, as we're in these meetings and we always agree we have to agree when we leave, even if we don't agree to disagree, but we have to agree when we leave on the way these things go. Having these foundational pillars in place really keeps us consistent, whether it's, we want to try something new, we'll try it, but we need to fact check ourselves to make sure that we're staying authentic to what Craveworthy wants to be and what these concepts are.
You're very enthusiastic about the way you just answered that question. Is this an awareness issue right now for why you don't have more operators coming in, or operators coming in at the pace that you expect?
It's a hybrid. So we would obviously love more influx for many, many reasons. But at the same time, we're going at a pace right now that I always like to say is a crawl, walk, run. We built the foundation. So the operators that are coming in now are not going to be dealing with the ghosts of Mongolian barbecues past. They're not going to be dealing with learning issues. We've done a lot of that. So the operators that we're bringing in now are really catalysts and champions for the brand and for Craveworthy. And I think that is really where you have to start. You have to get people that are champions, that believe in your methodology. So as you're onboarding new franchisees, whether they're, first-time operators or you're bringing in multi-unit, they are hearing and seeing that we're solving problems, not just for a logo. We're solving problems so that your store is going to be, money is going to be coming in. So it's not just going to be a passion for the brand.
I mean, if I were to stack up all of the things we've just talked about, leadership, product, marketing. We hit on obviously operations, building a culture of franchisees that believe in you, going back to those franchisees and showing that you support them and that that you've already gone through a lot of the checks and balances before these brands were ready to actually bring on operators. Like, it seems like you've engineered. It's simple, but you've engineered a complete package. Do you look at it and feel that way too? And not to put down other franchisors,
No.
but do they skip out on some of this stuff?
I think people go into autopilot, regardless of what you're doing, whether it's onboarding a franchisee, whether it's just dinners for the next week. It just, people go into autopilot. And so I think having a fresh set of eyes and being very intentional about not going into autopilot and being aware that we have a diverse group of franchisees, whether, like I said, they're first time or multi-unit, all of their opinions matter. One of the things culturally is that we say, you check your title at the door. I don't care what title you are. I would love to hear from my GM about what's working and what's not. Or if I did not vet a franchisee properly and moving forward, we should ask these questions. I think those are all valid so that we get better. And by doing that, we hold ourselves accountable, and then also, really focus on trying to be the best that we can be in the restaurant space. So I don't necessarily know if it's a miss. I know some people are a well-oiled machine, but then some people get lost in the cracks of that. So really trying to be a catch-all is something that's our intention.
Have you ever become a franchisee, or have you ever thought of becoming a franchisee?
We talk about it, my husband and I. It might be a little close for me to be here because you're too close to something, you see little things here and there, but there's nothing more fun, and I don't think our team hums better than when we are in a restaurant working together. We had a big grand opening for Budlong Southern Chicken at Toyota Music Factory. I always call it Music Park. Toyota Music Factory in Texas. And, I was there just helping bag food, and our, general manager there and our team there has been phenomenal. And I was like, what can I do? What can I help? And they simply were like, please just get out of the way a little bit, or put stickers on bags. And, that's not my role. That's not my title, but, the goal is providing a great customer experience. And we absolutely crushed that grand opening. It far surpassed our expectations. Everyone was a little bit tired at the end of the day, but everyone was leaving with a smile on their face. So to me, that's a big win.
Yeah. I mean, I think about you as a human. You align with what an ideal candidate should be in franchise. And the swing of my question, and I asked this about myself. I mean, I've been looking at brands, and I've been close. Where I've been interested, but I've never pulled the trigger, and I would be deemed a financially qualified candidate. And I asked myself, like, what prevents me from saying yes? When I've been at a finish line, validation. There was one time where I called the franchisees and I said, "Would you do this again?" And there was hesitation, and they said, some of the things the franchisor said aren't necessarily aligning. That was enough for me. Like, I was out. But I'm always curious, like, how does a franchisor get you or me into their system, knowing that both you and I would think about scale, and we would think about investment, and we have the backdrop in all of our categories to be successful. But for whatever reason, we don't pull the plug on it. It's, how do you crack that code?
I think it's a pronged answer here. So first and foremost, I always say go with your gut. I'm never going to convince someone to open a store or force someone to open the store for many, many, many reasons. I will not bully you into that just because it's not my speed. I want to align with what the goals are of you opening a store. Is it because you're bored and your niece, nephew, son, daughter is interested in operating this, and this will provide not only a job, but, let's just say, moments of pride where they can say, I built this and our family did this together. That, to me, these are great stories, right? And we can provide, or with the plethora of brands we have, what would make sense for their skill set, and then also come up with a plan for growth. I also think that, honesty in conversations with franchisees is super important. I'm going to pick on you, but I'm going to say, hey, why don't you call Nick and ask about his experience? He did have a rough opening, but since then we've changed X, Y, and Z. So when you reach out to Nick, it's going to say, well, our grand opening sucked. We've had a lot of better sales. And that's exactly what was said. So making sure that you're just being honest. You can't go into opening any business, let alone a restaurant, working with the general public with rose-colored glasses on, because every day is not going to be perfect. And you have to know that going into it. And so making sure that you're just saying and being honest about perhaps the flaws that you have had and or how you're working on them, I think really just provides credibility in terms of where you are and what you're doing. And then obviously speaking to the changes. A great example is Wing It On. We brought them into our portfolio. We had a little pushback from franchisees on limiting the menu just because certain people in certain areas perhaps loved the chicken sandwiches, and we got rid of the chicken sandwiches. They weren't selling in other areas as much as we thought, and we gross sales 8%. So, I mean, so the goal's there, and I think those types of conversations speak for themselves. And so if I were going to have you speak to a franchisee of Wing It On, I would give that example, saying the menu change was hard. People took that personally. We worked with them and grew with them on that. We have a chicken sandwich LTO as a, we hear you, but, that was a point of contention for a little while, but obviously 7% people get a little happier.
Well, I think what you just said is a magic piece of advice for the franchisor too. Like, get comfortable or get to know your blind spots.
Yeah.
And then when you have the right approach as a franchise brand to say, we're not going to get it right all the time, but here's what we're going to do to fix it. Like that level of transparency and honesty, I think will help you award more franchises, because even take McDonald's. I mean, I saw a news story this morning about the $18 Big Mac mistake that they made. And now the CEO is coming back and saying that may have not been right. We're going to focus on value this year.
Yep.
And so sometimes just owning up and taking accountability, which I think a lot of human beings struggle with that, can go a long way, especially when you're trying to build trust as a franchisor, because yes, what Craveworthy's been able to do is access 1 degree separation from a powerhouse leadership team. But beyond that, you're going to be selling to people who have 1, 2, 3 phone conversations with you, show up at a discovery day, meet you one time, and then invest a large lump of cash into the business. Like, that's a very intimate thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love that statement that you said.
Yeah. And I feel, just as my personal side too, I would never want to pull the wool over anyone's eyes in terms of, however they receive the money, whether it's their lifetime investment or it was a one-time sum from a past family member. They should invest that money appropriately. It's theirs. And so I want to make sure that they're getting the same thing out of that. And I will say our leadership team, myself, I'm probably actually the least, but myself, Greg, Jeremy, I'm definitely still in that bucket. Warwick are very point blank. I mean, we, Kristen on operations team, Cassie and our training team, I mean, we will call a spade and we'll have conversations about it. And it doesn't have to be rude, but we're not going to dance around, someone with the source sales who are really bad. And I'm like, okay, well, you haven't attended one franchise meeting or communicated with us your feelings. So how am I supposed to have a crystal ball to read your mind? And so these are things that we're not afraid to have these conversations with. And of course we want to get better, but we need to level set on the actual relationships. And so I think that's something that's a little bit refreshing, I would say, in the franchise space.
Well, what you just said is also, I mean, super valuable back to franchisees. Like if you don't raise your hand, if you don't communicate and you don't follow the system, yet you're paying these fees in exchange to use the brand, then shame on you. Like, right. The reason you buy in, like, you're buying a proven methodology. And again, go back to our opening statements about what you guys did on franchising a franchise. Like, you built the system for scale. Like, why would you ever not say, yes, let me follow your model when you're spending so much money on this thing? So Kim, for anybody, let's say someone's watched this up to this point, anything else you want them to know about Craveworthy on why they should reach out now?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you've seen us even over the last year, when it comes to acquisitions, when it comes to brand concepts, we really are trying to have every cuisine. We do not want to be a competitor with ourselves. We do focus on the best food, the best menu operationally, employee retention. Our goal is to make you money, but providing a really good guest experience while doing that. So, we've just had a couple announcements with some acquisitions that are snack brands. So, regardless of where you are when it comes to restaurant experience, financially, where you want to be, as long as you're trusting in the system for us to do that, you could be a very successful operator. we are all very passionate about the restaurant space, and we love people to come into that Craveworthy family. So just reach out. And if it doesn't work now, I can tell you how to get there. If it works now, we can make conversations on perhaps next steps.
I love it. One of my favorite conversations thus far. You're very real and honest and authentic. And if someone's watching this, you're not salesy. You're saying like, look where we're going. If you want to join on this wild ride that we're going on, then just reach out. And I love it.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Kim, thanks for sharing some of your story. Appreciate it. For Kim, I'm Nick. This is another episode of Meet the Zor.
Thanks.